the main man.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hi, Floyd. How are you?
I'm okay. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always, good to talk about my career, talk about growth, just talk about life. People love to hear my story, and I don't mind telling my story.
Great. We know you love telling your story. Floyd, before we look back on what's been a glorious boxing career, can we look forward and can I ask you a simple question or a two-part question? Dubai and Money Kicks. Tell us what's happening with this Money Kicks fight. Is it going to happen?
Well, we don't like to say it's a fight. We don't like to say it's an exhibition. We like to say it's a limited edition boxing showcase because this is for a very unique crowd, a very limited crowd, and it's about the entertaining the people, some very, very high-end people. So that's why I don't really want to, we don't call it an exhibition or a fight because it's not that.
So it's basically a private event up at the top of the Burj. Is that correct?
Yes. And for a very, very private, high-end, it's a very limited crowd.
Okay, we don't move back.
And Money Kicks, we talked about him. We are really not sure if it's him. And if it's not Money Kicks, we have another fighter that may step up who's undefeated. Because if I'm not mistaken, the event is called Undefeated.
Mm-hmm. So last question on this. I promise you, Floyd. The last question on this.
Okay.
Will the other fighter that steps up, is he a boxer or is he a YouTuber, an influencer? You say undefeated. I mean, if someone else were to replace Money Kicks, if that fight couldn't be made, is it a boxer?
Speaking with my team, he's a professional fighter actually. Mm-hmm. So it'd be great.
Floyd, let me ask you this. You had so many years, so many great fights, 26, 27 world champions. You came up against something like that. It's a massive streak, a 10, 12, 15-year streak, some brilliant fights. I was privileged to be ringside maybe 10 times, and it was a privilege, I can assure you. Let me ask you this. Had you been 25 and had this modern explosion of fights against influencers and fights against online entrepreneurs, would you have stepped away from boxing when you were 25, 26, 27, or would you have concentrated on boxing, Floyd?
I'm really not sure, meaning that at this age now, I'm still same thing I did before. I'm still working. I'm still working smarter and not harder. It's all about working smart. So if I'm able to, constantly make 8 and 9 figures retired, why not? I feel like I put in all the hard work early on within my career. I gave the sport about, even with me still competing right now, even if it's on the not on a huge level, because it's still on a big level because I'm still doing, crazy numbers if it's pay-per-view or if it's streaming. So I can't really say if I would I would have quit at 25. I can't really say, but that's a great question, actually.
Floyd, are you thinking maybe one fight a year for the next, or one event a year for the next 10 years? Because I'm looking at you there and you look in fantastic shape. I've seen some pictures of you recently and you look in fantastic shape. Your head's in the right place, as we say.
Yes. Well, I feel like a part of my career, what made me so smart was not really taking a lot of punishment and taking care of my body. It's all about having your faculties, still staying sharp, being smart. And that's what I did. First thing my dad taught me, and I've talked about this in the past, the less you get hit, the longer you last in the sport of boxing. And that works in anything, even in business. unless your pockets get hit and the smarter investments you make, I mean, it's all about building long-term wealth, generational wealth. And that's even in the sport of boxing. The same thing that applied in the inside is the same way I take, the same way is my approach every day in life.
Floyd, I'm going to ask you specifically about some of your fights, or rather, I'm going to try and find out what fights were special to you. And the question I'd like to ask is, of all of the fights you had, of the 50 fights and the 26, 27 big name boxers that you managed to beat, which one did you train the hardest for? Which one could you sense that you were just that little bit more motivated when you stepped through the doors into your gym?
I never overlooked any opponent. So I feel like for the Miguel Cotto fight, I overtrained. And for the Diego Corrales fight, I trained perfect for that. For the Arturo Gatti fight, I trained perfect for that. Who else? It's certainly
such a long list.
Yes, it's a huge list. Justin Juco. A lot of people don't really, a lot of people don't know who Justin Juco is. Very, very tough competitor, tough fighter. And I used so many different skills and tricks in that fight. And a lot of people really don't pay attention or talk about that fight. But there's so many different fights that I can think of. I mean, that I can't think of offhand, but it's, I just feel like I'm blessed, truly, truly blessed.
But was there a moment between the pre-super featherweight title, before you won that world title, and before you became the defensive master that you were by about 2005 and 6 and 7? Was there a time when you felt the change? You felt the need to change? Because a lot of people listening to this and watching you here, they won't remember what you were like as a super featherweight. When you barely resembled the Floyd Mayweather we saw over the next 10 or 15 years. You became a different man. Can you remember, was it one particular fight where you went, you know what, this is entertaining, but I need to be smarter? Was it one fight?
No, remember, go back and pay attention. Even in the beginning of my career, I didn't take any punishment. You go look at me fighting in the Olympics, competing in the Olympics, I didn't take any punishment. So I think I was more probably offensive minded, even though, of course, in a shootout, you're going to get shot. I mean, that happens. But you want to take the less shots as possible and give more shots. So just, throughout my career in the beginning, I was just there to seek, destroy, and move on to the next. So beat the best, beat whoever you put in front of me. And I didn't care because I didn't understand the business part, because I wasn't taught the business part. In the beginning of my career, my family member just took me to a company, Top Rank, and said, just sign. And at that particular time, I was a young kid. I didn't have good representation, because I didn't know no better. So if I knew what I knew now, would I've signed with Top Rank? I would have had a lawyer look over my paperwork at that particular time. Because I thought my family member was doing what was best for me. And at that particular time, he was doing what was best for him, to put him in a position so he can make a couple dollars from my talent, for me signing on that dotted line. But just, the young kids that's coming up, always make sure you have the proper attorney looking over paperwork for you. That's very, very important in the sport of boxing, not just fighting. And
I think that's a message that you've got across over the last 10 or so years, Floyd. Yes. And so many of the young fighters that are out there now, either ones that you're involved with or ones that just look up to you, and most of them do. They always talk next to your skills in the ring are your skills outside the ring. By the way, Floyd,
Yes.
I've got to ask you this question. It's quite simple. If Floyd Mayweather could travel back in time, who would he like to test himself against, and at what weight? Any decade, any time. It could be 20 years. It could be 70 years. Take me back in time on your time machine, Floyd.
You know, one of my close friends who I speak to on a regular, Sugar Ray Leonard. He's the guy that beat my father, and he's one of the best. He's one of the best. He's an all-time great. Roberto Duran. He's another all-time great. Julio Cesar Chavez. He's an all-time great. There's so many, just legends. But are we talking about weight classes or?
You can choose. No, it's got to be your weight class. So we're not having you fighting Muhammad Ali in 1964.
Okay.
Don't be silly.
Tommy Hearns, and it's another fighter that nobody never talk about. They never really talk about two fighters. Actually, they really never talk about Aaron Pryor, and Pernell Whitaker. Both of those guys are some of the best guys to ever put on a pair of gloves, and I got to take my hat off to those guys. And one more guy,
go on,
Michael, second to none. Michael Nunn was unbelievable. So there's so many fighters that the public and the people don't talk about, who I'm going to give credit to because they put in so much hard work. And they are the guys that help pave the way for me to be where I'm at, and for me to have accomplished what I've accomplished in the sport of boxing.
And finally, Floyd, from me, before I throw it open to the floor, in a couple of days' time, it would have been Muhammad Ali's 80th birthday party. When you were young, and I mean young, when you were first in the gym and your uncles were there and your dad was there and all those great fighters around, can you remember much of Ali? Did you watch his films growing up? Did you watch his fights growing up?
Well, I've always watched Muhammad Ali. He wasn't just a good fighter inside the ring. He stood for a strong cause, and I respect him for that. He stood for what he believed in. And I'm all about standing for what you believe in, just like me in the sport of boxing. I feel like I got a lot of scrutiny in the sport because I spoke my mind, I spoke up, and believed in myself, believed in my talent. And if something wasn't right, I said, that's not right. I want to be treated fair, and everybody should be treated fair just in life. And I always just wanted to be on an even playing field in the sport of boxing, inside the ring, as well as outside the ring. I just want to be treated fair. That's all.
Floyd, it's been a delight, this part of the interview today. It's great to talk to you again. The boys will take over now. The floor will be open. Floyd Mayweather, thank you so much for spending time talking to me.